everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Hyfi Preschool and Kids Weekly Training Podcast. My name's Kayla, and I am joined with my friends Crystal and Isaac, and we are so excited to jump into Hyfi this week. We are talking about how God connects us to each other. So this month in Hyfi, we have been talking about how we are made for community and how God gives us friends in the preschool space. So this whole month, we're talking about what does it mean to really lean into biblical community, and what does it mean to have friends at church? How do we find belonging and connection here in our churches? So Isaac, Crystal, quick question for you guys as we jump in. So we're talking about connection, and I want to hear about a favorite teacher or someone who taught you a lot, someone who helped connect something to your learning experience as a kid. Maybe you had a favorite teacher growing up, or maybe there's someone in your adult life who has just been a guide or a teacher or a helper for you along the way.
For sure. So I went to school for graphic design, but something about me is I am very colorblind. So one of the classes that Crystal has experienced some awful colorblind moments where I've tried to go out on a limb and just say with confidence that something was a certain color and it wasn't. So, but I went to school for graphic design, even though I was colorblind. And one of the classes I was required to take was color theory. And I'm not going to lie, I waited until my last year of college to take this because I was dreading it so badly. But I had such an amazing professor, Carrie Ann. I walked into the class and I had her for a different class before, and she knew what she was working with when I came into the class. So I was like, hey, this is what's up. And she's like, we'll figure this out. And honestly, I think 90% of the reason that I can do my graphic design side of my job on a daily basis is because of how she explained color, how she broke it down into numbers, she knows I love math. So we did a lot of math with color, and just the way that she took a lot of extra time. And I got an A in color theory as a colorblind person. So, but that was not because of me.
That's amazing.
That was not because of me. She did a lot of work in that to help me to get it there. So yes.
I totally think that is because of you. But I also love just the attention and sometimes the people in our lives who really help us the most are the ones who take time to break things down, to take extra time to give us additional attention that we need, that's going to help in a way that's really meaningful. I love that. Crystal, what about you? Any teachers in your life?
Yeah, I was racking my brain, and of course I'm having one of those moments where I'm like, I can't even think of my teachers' names. But what I do remember, I grew up with parents who worked. They both worked my whole childhood. And so I had a lot of babysitters, but when I was young, I had one consistently, and her name was Mrs. Linder. I can remember Mrs. Linder's face. I can remember the way that she talked. And really what I remember about Mrs. Linder is, just the different stuff that she taught me. She is the one who taught me to tie my shoes. I can remember her teaching me to jump rope, just things like that. But I'm going to share something that I think for some of our listeners in the South, this might make them a little bit uncomfortable. She would make me grits, and she taught me to put sugar and butter on my grits.
Oh, no.
And I know that there are some people in the South.
Let's go.
And even my own parents thought it was disgusting, but that's how I grew up. And I will say that is still how I eat my grits to this day, is I put butter and sugar on them. So I'm a sweet grit girl. What can I say?
You know what?
Maple syrup. Have you ever done maple syrup?
Oh,
I know this.
No.
Change your life.
This
Change your
conversation
life.
is going in a different direction. Oh my goodness. No way. Okay, well, let me say I can still be in community with you guys, and
yes, you can.
I'm so grateful for you and your friendship, and we will agree to disagree because grits should only have butter and salt on them and maybe some cheese. But anyway, thank you for sharing that story. I love that. And yeah, like I said, I think that we all have those stories in our lives, right? We all can think of those people who had a meaningful connection with us, who were maybe a teacher or just someone who spent a little additional time with us to help us learn a little bit more, to go a little bit deeper. And I think that that is something as ministry leaders, like we get to be those people for the kids in our ministries and the kids in our classrooms. We get to be the people who come alongside kids and who see them, who connect with them, who, when they have questions, we sit with them and with their questions. When they have really hard circumstances come up in their lives, we can sit with them in the hurt and the sadness and pray with them. And so I just want to encourage all of us who are walking in ministry together. One, you are not alone. Like, we're in this together. And two, the small moments of impact that you have matter. What you are doing in the life of a child right now, they may not see what's going on in this moment, but I guarantee you they can look back in 10, in 15, in 20 years and be reminded of that leader who took the time to pour in and invest in their lives. And so I just want to say thank you, one, for your ministry, for your leadership, the way that you are serving kids and families. And I pray that this week, as we teach kids about how God connects us to each other, that you were able to see some really tangible, sweet ways that God is using you as a ministry leader to connect to kids and to other families in your ministry. So this week, we are walking alongside Acts 18, and we are looking at the Bible story of Priscilla and Aquila and Apollos. And this is a really cool story to talk about how God connects us to each other, because you have a Priscilla and Aquila who are teaching about Jesus, and then you have Apollos, who is also teaching some things about Jesus, but he didn't have all of the connected devices and podcasts to listen to know all the things that were happening. And so he was misinformed about a few things. And so when Priscilla and Aquila come along, they don't hear what he is sharing and say, oh my goodness, I know that this isn't correct. Let me critically, tear you down or critically talk about you in this public setting. They pulled him aside privately, and they taught him, and they nurtured him, and they taught him the things of Jesus. And then he was able to take that instruction and then go and tell more and more and more people about Jesus. This story speaks a lot about the importance of connection and about the importance of relationship and how and when to speak into one another's lives and in appropriate settings and how we do that. We also know that the kids in our ministries are more connected technologically than any other generation. As we study Gen Z and Gen Alpha, we just know that kids are so connected. And also, they are not connected, right? They're not finding belonging. They're not finding those true friendships and lasting relationships that help them really be rooted into Scripture. And so I just want to ask you guys, where do you see this standing out, and how do you see this kind of impacting our ministries and our worlds, where we have all of this information, we're really, really connected, but then we're actually not connected? Where do you guys see that?
Yeah, as we see that these kids are connected through their devices, through their iPads, through so many different channels technologically, we are seeing that the rise in anxiety is going up. We see that the rise in kids who identify themselves as being lonely or being alone, that number is going up drastically year after year. And it is because that these relationships, these connections that we are saying that are digital, they are not true connection, that they are not real belonging. They are just something that they can jump into and say, hey, I'm part of this chat group, or I'm a part of this fandom, or I'm a part of something here. And they can be a part of it. They can interact with it. But then when something happens in their lives, those people aren't there for them. When something crazy, when they decide, ooh, I actually don't like this thing that I said I liked a few years ago, I'm not really a fan of it anymore. Well, suddenly that community, that everything that they've known through that connectivity, it suddenly goes away. And those things just kind of fall off. But the joy of it is that when we are connected to our community through Christ, when we are connected through the people that are at our church, that are in our small group, that we get to hang out with on a Sunday morning, to our teacher, our small group teacher leader that on a Sunday morning, when we are connected to them, when we get to help connect kids to them, that is something that is long lasting. We've alluded to the book Flip the Script a lot, and in that book is the flip, those leaders, those people, those friends, those people in your church that they are going to connect to, that when they are connected to those people in the church, there is a much higher retention rate in the church because those connections truly matter. The connections that we have with people 3,000 miles away, they might not actually matter, but the people that we have right there in our community, in our town, those people that we're able to talk to about as we grow in Christ, those are the connections that will truly matter and have lifelong effect on these kids in a positive way.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's so true. I think, as we're thinking about our culture and this struggle for belonging, right? That we know kids and even leaders, honestly, are looking for a place to belong. Isaac, you mentioned Flip the Script. There's a quote in there that is just one of my favorites, and I don't know exactly who said it. I don't know if it was Stephanie or if it was Chuck or if it was Jana, because they all three wrote this book. But it is so powerful to me, and it just stays with me. And it says that non-religious people often crave Christian community long before they crave Christian faith. And I just think that's so important for us to think through as leaders who have kids coming into our ministry who are not followers of Jesus. Their families may be non-religious people who are coming to church, and oftentimes they're coming looking for community even before they are coming looking for Christian faith. So Crystal, talk to us a little bit about why it is that we care and really lean into the value of entire households, the entire families finding biblical community, and then how do we help them?
Yeah. And this is something I'm super passionate about. Like some of the first conversations I ever had with anybody at Lifeway was about how I feel like, kids ministry really is family ministry. Like we don't just care about the kids, we care about the entire family. And I think so much about how so often the very first point of connection for families is in kids ministry. Families are more likely to stay at a church that their children enjoy going to. But then what happens is these kids are having a great experience because, let's be honest, we're fantastic at what we do, right? That's why we do what we do. We're providing them an amazing experience. We're helping them foster community in our kids' space. But then these adults will go into church and they will sit in the back and they won't talk to anybody, and then they'll come and they'll pick up their kids. And when we think about it, like, we don't want that for anyone. Like the same way that we desire for the kids in our ministry to experience real, true, Christ-centered community, we want that for the adults and their families too. The same way that we want kids to stick, if you will, in church because they love the community, we want that for the adults in their lives too. And so I honestly believe that it is our job as ministry leaders to disciple the whole family and to help find these points of connection for the whole family. When you think about the amazing example of Priscilla and Aquila, how they went out of their way to help this person, that's what we get to do. So a family comes and they drop their kids off, and we just take a couple of minutes to chat with them. Like, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Have conversations with them. Find ways to connect during the week. If we have a kid that's got a soccer game and we think, I should go to that soccer game, don't just go and cheer on the kid. Go and sit by the parents or the grandparents or whoever is there and start up a conversation. And let's be intentional about finding ways that we can minister to and really connect with these adults, because as they grow in their love of Jesus and their love of community, they're going to set that example for their kids, and they're going to prioritize their kids finding community. If the adults are finding community, I mean, if I were to ask you guys right now, if we were on a Facebook Live and I would say, type in the chat, like, what are the reasons that people give for not coming to church? It's because they have a million other things that they feel like, well, this is more important. But when we help adults find community in church, when we're intentional about building connections and relationships with them and helping them build connections and relationships with one another, church becomes a priority for them, which then, of course, it's going to be a priority for their kids too. It starts to become the number one thing because community is so important to them. And, like you said, Kayla, with that amazing quote from Flip the Script, like, they're longing for it. Adults are longing for that as well. Like, we talk about Gen Alpha being increasingly isolated, but you know what? It's the same for Gen Z. It's the same for Gen X. It's the same for millennials in between there. It's like, it's part of our society now. And so let's be intentional about connecting with the adults as well as the kids. And we will see this amazing growth permeate entire households.
That's so good.
And one more thing I want to add about, like, when you're at that soccer game, when you're at that basketball game, you have a captive audience for 60 minutes that you just get to talk to them. You get to talk to them. You get to ask them questions. I've learned more about a family sitting on the bleachers of a soccer game than I ever have in the conversations I've had in the hallways of church. Because
Absolutely.
When you are there to cheer on their kid, when you're there to root them on, when you bring them Gatorades, when you bring a little sign and you're there to cheer them on, then that shows to them that they're just not a number coming in on a Sunday morning, but they're actually someone that matters to you and that 100%. They want to be part of that community.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love that. And listeners, just so you know, one of the ways that we want to help provide that opportunity for you and provide that community for your families is through our 4 family events that Hyfi offers every single year. And so we already have 2 events that are out. There's a family game night that is an event. And then we also have Holly Jolly Palooza written by our own Crystal Mazuka. She did a fantastic job and it is full of so much fun. And so we really encourage you to jump into your subscription and find that under the Dropbox link there, and look there in that advanced planning section to find Holly Jolly Palooza, to go ahead and start now preparing for the holiday season that is to come, so that you can be part of helping connect those families together. And as always, if you haven't checked out our Facebook community group, the Hyfi Facebook community group, please do so. We love to connect with you. It's not just a place for information. We really want this to be a spot for us as church leaders to be able to ask questions of one another, learn from each other, see what we're doing, how we're doing a Hyfi in our ministries from week to week, to be able to encourage one another in our ministry, and help us to remember that we are all in this together. So we cannot wait to continue on this journey. Next week is our last week of I Am Made for Community, or God Gives Me Friends, for preschool. And so we hope you will tune in with us next week as we look into how God wants us as followers of Jesus to work together. We can't wait to see you again soon.